Hi, and welcome to MindSet, an HCD vidcast, where we dive into the world of applied consumer neuroscience and market research with leading experts in the field. My name is Michelle Nigella, PhD in behavioral neuroscience and Director of Research and Innovation at HCD.
And I'm Kathryn Ambrose, the Manager of Behavioral and Marketing Sciences with HCD. As your hosts, we are going to act as the buzzkills for the buzzwords, taking time to critically think about the limitations and pitfalls of emerging trends and topics within the field to help you identify what innovation has a lot of untapped potential or is too good to be true.
Now, HCD is a full-service research house which provides research capabilities on consumers by looking at how they perceive, evaluate, and respond to different types of stimuli, such as looking at product experiences, communications, or just general consumer and shopper experiences. We use a combination of tools that come from psychology, physiology, neuroscience, as well as the traditional methods that people typically use to see how they experience different stimuli. That stimuli can range from the early stages of exploration all the way through the final product validation tests. This is what we refer to as applied consumer neuroscience.
So stick around for more curious conversations as we chat our way through the ever-evolving space of consumer science. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to MindSet. We are so happy to have you here listening today. With us is a very special guest. We have Rex Chng with us. I'm so excited. Welcome to the show, Rex.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And Rex, how do we know each other? Because you and I know each other not just from working together through HCD. He's been doing his internship with us, but actually through the MBDS program, right?
Yeah. I think we started the same program, like the same year.
We're the same cohort.
2020 September, the pandemic cohort.
The world stopped working, and then we said, "Let's go to school."
Exactly.
So I got to say, we've had a great time collaborating with UPenn and the Decision Sciences program. Having, some pretty awesome interns, and you can see some of our other conversations with them. But what we love doing is kind of reviewing with the interns, like what happened to you this semester, and to have you kind of talk about your experience a little bit. But before we kind of get to that point, we like to learn a little bit more about you and share that with the audience. So it's kind of what we call the origin story. Like, what is your origin story? What brought you to be interested in decision sciences and in UPenn? And what is your origin story? Let's hear it.
Yeah. So after undergrad, I did econ in undergrads, and I wasn't sure what I want to do at that time. Was I wanted to go into product management, and I did have an internship after undergrad, and at that time with a health tech company. At that time, I was working closely with the other internal stakeholder, but mostly with the product design team, and I kind of know how they run all this research on their user. I think it's so fascinating to understand what they're trying to find, and so I kind of decided to want to pivot it from product management to more user experience, behavioral science. And at that time, I was looking for a different program. I remember there was three I was considered. I actually applied to this one's MBDS program, and also the Human-Centered Designs master program at University of Washington in Seattle. So I was there at the time. I was like, if I got in, I don't have to move. And the other one is also like behavioral science program, but it's in London School of Economics. And I remember that back then, not a lot of programs like behavioral science. So this is one of the fields I actually kind of touch on, can help me like transition into another career. And UPenn is the only one that accepted me clearly. So I was like, okay. And that time I was working kind of like program management. I don't really like it. I was like, I'm just going back to school and kind of learn more, and we'll see from there.
Sometimes it helps when the decision is made for us and it's serendipitous, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I always joke that I went into the behavioral and decision science program because I am the worst decision maker I know. And so I'm hoping
to find out why.
Yeah.
Well, the secret joke in psychology is that you study what your problem is. You
Yeah.
know, so like watch out for some people after you ask them what they study. That's
But it
always
also
been
kind
kind
of
of
makes
an
sense. But it also kind of
Yeah.
makes sense.
So Rex, what are your interests? What are you hoping to do with behavioral science? Maybe we can dissect you a little bit.
Yeah. So now I kind of consider I mostly want to get into UX research, but also I know kind of behavioral science still kind of growing at this point. Not a lot of behavioral scientists now.
Yeah.
Recently, I've seen a lot of such companies start like hiring, but mostly in like very senior position. So I'm hoping in one day I'll be able to have enough like experience, I'll be able to move laterally to be a behavioral scientist eventually, like align with what I'm studying.
That is like a catch-22, right? It's a
Yeah.
new field,
Yeah.
but they want you to have 10 years of experience.
Yeah, exactly. This is how it works now.
Yeah. So you have like 20 internships and eventually,
finally.
yeah.
I'm getting there. Probably have another like 18 more.
Well, we were happy to be your first possibly internship in the world of behavioral science. And,
Yes.
and, you know, it was kind of interesting because I know you had a couple options to choose from. What interested you in what HCD was looking into, and why did you want to do your summer? Well, not summer, your last semester with us.
Yeah. So just like you said, there was like a list of client I can select from. At that time, I was considering I want something there I can actually learn from a skill. And I know that HCD has a different tool, and also talking to people who have like previous intern also have our program haven't worked, and I heard good things. I was like, I want to get
Oh, do
something that's actually
tell.
Yeah.
Who did you talk to? What did they say?
I talked to a few, like I kind of just
You don't have to give names.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
they kind of like the flexibility so that you can choose your topics. Because I know some client has they're very set topic that they want to explore. Like for HCD, just like very high level and can choose anything like related to that. So it's like there was like
Choose
the
your own
flexibility.
adventure.
Yeah, choose an adventure.
Yeah, we the way we try to word our internship options is we have a general topic and maybe some methodologies that we might suggest that the intern use. But we find that when the intern is more excited about it is when, you know, and they do better work, to be honest, is when it's something they're passionate about or have genuine interest in. I think that works out so much better for both parties involved, right? And it's something that they can use later on too, because if it is a passion of yours, then you can take this project and go forth. And if you're interviewing, you can use it as a presentation or maybe to speak to that you have experience in it. So I think it's mutually beneficial.
100%. And Rex, can you start to share a little bit? So we molded this project together. And there was a lot of conversations initially about what route was of interest to you. Can you speak a little bit to that for us?
Yeah. So I remember when we first talked about it, we have a few options, and one is like the canned cocktail ideas. Because that was like one of the things that I went for a trip with my friend, and we saw this in the grocery store. I never seen them before. I think it was very interesting. That was one of the options, and the second option, I really talked about NFT for a long time. But it turns out kind of just I'm not sure that would be like a future thing, since at this point people just like it's like a hot topic, but it seems like a lot of people understand what it is. And we eventually landed on this on-demand delivery service because of the UberEats promotions of Superbowl this year. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because the topic we gave to you was brand harmony. So how people's expectations might differ from what the brand is actually offering, whether it's products or services. And so you came back with this idea of the on-demand services, and it was because of the Super Bowl, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I remember talking about like Uber, everybody associated with them like with ride sharing service. But Super Bowl this year specifically on Uber Eats, and not just on the food, but like grocery delivery and like essential products. So it's interesting to see that they're kind of trying to pivoting, adding more service, not just what they set out initially. So I feel like that would be like interesting study, because when I go on Uber Eats, I feel like the default now to me personally is still like restaurant, because that's what you open now. But now if you open out the app, there's so many different options. Like they even have ride sharing, some Uber Eats app that you can go, they direct you to Uber apps. So you can see that they're kind of like trying out how do you like rebrand themselves in a way for laying ground for a future, how bring that other different services onto the platform.
And when it comes to brand harmony, that can be really challenging, right? So some of the classic examples we give where this has been successful or unsuccessful. So like Buick, for example, is always thought of as an old-fashioned car. People think of their grandparents driving a Buick, but they're making a pivot to try to seem more modern. And so all of their advertisements have been really pushing, how surprised people are at how modern and fancy and luxurious these Buicks are. So that's one hand where I think it's actually, successfully trying to remold and reshape what the brand is seen as. Whereas another car example would be Volvo, right? Where Volvos are typically seen as being this really safe, family-oriented car. And they're trying to rebrand, or they have been in the past, trying to rebrand as being an adventure sporty car, which is really kind of the opposite of safe and family, right? So I think that's been more of a struggle and not necessarily very cohesive in the mind of the consumers, and they can potentially alienate people. So when we're talking about this situation where in your mind, maybe, or my mind, or anybody's mind that uses Uber, maybe you think of it as it is just a ride share. I use it to get from the airport to home, right? And, the idea of having them help you pick up your medicine or, do your grocery shopping and take you to a restaurant, like it can be difficult for some people to make that transition in their minds of what the brand can do. So it's kind of our goal here was to look at, how far can the brand perception stretch, right? Is it, is it in the realm of acceptability, or, what you expect from the brand to be able to do your medications or take you to your doctor's appointments,
And I do think it's important to recognize that we'll just keep going with Uber and how it kind of inspired this research for you, that they are doing small incremental steps to dip their toe in the water. They're not just plunging straight in and saying, nope, we do this now. It's it's a slow mold into what it is.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's for sure. Because I think pandemic probably is the one that like the catalyst that pushed them to focus on like delivery, like groceries and other stuff.
There's so many things that maybe people need help with. I think I had talked to Kathryn before about, and maybe I brought this up with us. I sprained my ankle years ago when I first moved to Philadelphia, and I didn't know anybody, and I couldn't go to the store. I couldn't get anything. And there were no things like this that existed. And so like I did find on Craigslist someone who was willing to do like run errands. And so I was able to get them to like pick up some things from like getting like, the ankle support from the pharmacy. I couldn't even do that, or getting me crutches or something. So, but now you can call up Uber, right? You can load it up on your phone and get any of those things, which was not the case.
Uber. There's so many
TaskRabbit.
Right. Yeah. There's so many delivery services now that are all trying to grab at this space. So I thought it was important that Rex, you can speak to this, that we explored what kind of services are available. What did we end up landing on for this research?
I think there was like a list of it. I think we eventually chose like 11 of them. Like, I think some of them are very like, but down, like, I think it was a lot, but it's like, you can see they're kind of overlap with each other. Some smaller company have like these 5, but overlap 2 with the other. I think one of the I kind of surprised with like the home care, like finding someone on demand to take care of someone at home. I think that was like kind of surprising, that company actually trying to do that.
It's interesting because we I have an elder, my grandmother is elderly and she needs some help for home care now. And so
It's so hard to find.
it's a really hard thing to
Right.
find. So it makes sense. There's pockets in the market that still need to be filled in terms of on-demand delivery services. But the ones that we decided to look at because of the nature of the design of this research was the really popular ones that everyone knew. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Uber, Walmart, Amazon, Instacart, and then there's one more. Do you remember? Lyft. Yeah. And so why did we end up picking those 5? What were some of the criteria you were looking for?
So it was kind of simple. I just want to we want to make sure people are familiar with the brand. So we want to know how they associate with the brand. So because of the method we're using, the MaxDiff Implicit, if they're not understanding, have never heard of that brand, it's kind of you kind of use this for them. I don't know this one, so it'll be like they're probably not going to react to the word that associate to that brand. So it was kind of easier at that time as I would want to have a brand that many people understand, they have seen or at least used before.
Totally. And you just touched on it a little bit. What is, just for maybe listeners that aren't as familiar, can you just explain what the MaxDiff is and what implicit is? We talk about it a good amount on the podcast, but
and we can even reference it, I think, in the description below.
Yes, 100%.
We call it Max Implicit, but you've had to describe it now. So what are your thoughts? How would you describe it to someone?
So I would describe it as like a research tool that has 2 parts. The first is combine the traditional tools and psychology tool. So the first part will be like max difference. They will kind of use to understanding consumer preference because they have to choose the most and the least important item to them and go through several rounds and understand how eventually it ranks. And the second part is like the implicit association test, the commonly used in psychology, and it's kind of just test how people implicitly associate with certain word to a certain, like this connecting these 2 things and how they react to them based on how fast and also how if they think that word describe something.
I think the other cool thing to note about the Max Implicit approach is that it can be done online. It's fairly quick. And so we don't have to bring someone into anywhere. It's pretty easy for us to implement, but, and we do it a lot. We use the Max Implicit approach a lot, particularly in our intern projects. But I think that you were looking at some particularly interesting things. And there were some interesting things you did with the data. So if you could give us just some of your thoughts on where you took things to help you understand just what happened in your study.
Yeah, so besides that, Max Implicit too, to see what matters to them based on their priority when it comes to using the on-demand delivery service or how they associate them to the brands. I was initially very interested to see how they relate to each other and what kind of service they use. So I eventually did a social network analysis graph to see how our participant position in the map, just what type of service that connects them, and are they using multiple service or are they more just using one type of service but very frequently. I think that was like it's like kind of part of additional method decided you at the end to just kind of more visually see where they are at the graph.
And Rex,
you know what
sorry. I was just going to ask Rex, why do you think that this would be useful in a study like this to look into that type of a network analysis? What drew you to that?
Yeah, so a network analysis is typically used to see how people connect with each other. And at this case, I was interested to see how many type of services they use, because I think one of the services we asked is like, have you used what kind of service they use, and kind of check that all to apply. You can see that some of them will connect to like 6 different services they used before. So it's in a way that we can kind of know who are these people and where are they in the graph, and the way that we can kind of know it's this particular person, or like see where they congregate each other at the position. So it kind of, it will easier to target them at some point. You want to like allocate your resources more effectively to to your to know.
Well,
What I think is
the
really,
positioning.
Yeah.
what I think is really interesting about this approach is that so often in market research, we boil people down to aggregates, right? So mean effects, main effects, and we ignore the individuals. And there's a lot missed when you do that. So, when you look at just the mean of, say, like the implicit reactions, right? What I thought was really interesting about your whole approach to things is that I think you incorporated more of the individual differences among people, because even in the graphs that you made for the implicit data, you used the box plots instead of just using bar graphs. And I think that what was really important that is that you actually see the distribution of the individual responses,
Right.
Which is really telling. Because that mean really ignores the whole spread, and being able to see that spread is so important to really understand better the differences and look at the trends. So I think even in the presentation you gave, you were able to speak to some of those trends, maybe more accurately or maybe more descriptively than if you were just looking at means. And so then using the network analysis, being able to pull in those connections to really point out, like what this type of person who answered in these ways can really tell you. And in some ways that can be more confusing, right? So I think that like, it's almost like information overload. It's like, well, what does that mean? But I wonder if that is just because we're so used to looking at things boiled down into means. But I think a lot of times means and metrics are measures of what Glenn would call mediocrity, right? When you bring everybody down to a simple thing like that, you ignore the wealth of information you collected. So is that something like an approach that you kind of noticed in yourself, that you were more interested in individual differences, or what brought you to that?
Yeah, so I think it started from there's like a few occasion in this program. Let's talk about like how, because we most of the time in behavioral science we do like experimental study. You test on like control and then different treatment and see the group difference. I remember there's this behavioral scientist, I forgot who he was. It was like a few months ago. So he came to talk about the organization works in, I think, Latin America. So they talk about a lot of time behavioral science research was still kind of focused on like the overall effects, how group like treatment compared to control between treatments. But it seems like he's trying to advocate like how can we move over to have a more like segmented like female versus male within that treatment. So kind of like boils down to like these are differences. That's like treatment one works as a control, but within the treatment one, where can we find people that it actually reacts to the treatments? So it kind of boils down to like, is there male's gender different? Is that is it different? Like how can we dive in more and to different treatments? So like how can we to come up with better solution? Because when you're actually implementing those interventions, they're actually different in real life. We need to target the specific person that actually reacts to them. So it's kind of like,
because we're all different people, right? So we might be
right.
reacting slightly differently, even though the mean is here and showing an effect. Your effect could be huge and mine could be small.
Right. And a lot of that plays into the value in choosing the right statistical test to look into. That, it's funny because everyone thinks of stats as this hard and fast thing, but it really does have an art to it.
There is an art, absolutely.
Yeah, which I always appreciate. And it kind of reminds people, and I think the program does a really great job of this in teaching us that statistics is in some ways very arbitrary, because it's also biased in what you decide to look at and what you decide to run. And, so there is no one rule for all. It's not just the mean or the average that's going to help you.
Or the p-value.
Or the p-value. Exactly. And Rex, so can you share a little bit about what you discovered through this research? What were some of your findings, and
like, what did you take away?
Yeah.
So I think one thing surprised me is like now all this tech company doing there are like they keep saying that they're like very convenient, all these flashy feature. But when you actually look at what we studied, it boils down to like that how consumer just want something that's very reliable and they can get something on time and like they can trust them fast within the time frame with the least amount of effort that's possible. like all these additional feature, they're like good to have and can set them apart once everything's there basic has been like basic needs have been met. So it's like very interesting. It's like we have all these companies trying to promote like how good they are, how innovative all these feature, but I wonder how is the time that actually trying to evaluate themselves based on like, do they satisfy the basic first?
I think that's a really interesting question. You know, there's the Haslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And I wonder if there really is like, you know, a consumer's hierarchy of needs for each segment of products, right? And that those things really have to be met before you really worry about these other incentives, right?
Right. And it's funny because you were touching on how you're interested in going into UX. Well, there's this really great book that Michelle and I talk about all the time that's titled Don't Make Me Think. And it's all about UX and how that is one of the biggest rule of UX is don't make me think. It's making things be intuitive. And I think your research really did kind of complement what the book is saying. So even though you didn't set out to do a UX study, you have a lot of UX insights into this.
It kind of is. I mean, maybe because it is a web-based service industry, right? There is a lot of UX there, you know, ease of use and intuitiveness and meeting basic needs, that all the flash doesn't necessarily get you what you're looking for. Right.
Exactly. And so going from this, I also am curious, and we always love to ask this question, as you went through the process of designing and actually executing the study, was there any hiccups along the way that you learned from that, you know, you might not have gotten in a traditional setting, but now that you're able to actually apply what you've learned, you're like, oh, there is a little bit of ebb and flow to this type of research.
Yeah. So I guess I remember this like very clearly when we started to program the survey. I went to run into some issues. So initially we actually had like 6 brands, like TaskRabbit is one of them, but it turns out to be like very hard because not a lot of people understand have seen no TaskRabbit. So I had to remove to make sure that we have enough of participants. And also I think what I learned is like the recruiting process is not as simple, even though actually has like a vendor like we're using, but how do you define the things that I never considered was like you have to specify, do you want a quota or something like certain groups? I think it was like you can get very, very specific.
Yes.
That's just something I never considered. It's like,
you know, some people want to go with census, right? So if you want to get census, you know, data, you know, so having, you know, demographics that match the census of the US, right? You know, on the male female split, the different ethnicities, you know, different income ranges, or is it that you're interested in something more specific, that you really do want a 50-50 split on male female, that you want them to be between a certain age range, you know? So there's a lot of decisions to make that people don't always realize are being made when you're doing any studies like this.
Right. Yeah. Especially it's like, you have to understand like, this is really what you want, because like it can potentially affect like how
totally change your results, right?
How you analyze the data. This is what you set out to study. You have to keep thinking about okay.
But then you have to be, you know, very clear when you discuss the results. Well, we focused on people who were 18 to 30, you know, or we focused on people who are 18 to 50, because those two groups are going to be very different, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely the biggest lessons I learned. That when we trying to send out the survey, it's definitely very helpful because
I think we had some really good discussions about what it would mean, right? Like, oh, well, if you went with this group, it's going to mean this, you know?
Like the implications of like choosing this but not the other.
Yes.
It's like every decision could potentially impact.
It cascades, right? Yeah.
It's so true. But Rex, we had so much fun going through this research process with you and kind of helping you and guiding you throughout the way, because we had, like Michelle said, we had some really great conversations, and the conversations we had actually sparked further internal conversations about ways that we can keep improving and we can keep making ourselves better researchers. So it's always great to have the interns with us to, help facilitate those conversations. I do want to make sure we have time for the game that I love playing, the React Attack game. For anyone that's listening that hasn't heard this episode or listened to an episode previously, it's just a free association. I'm going to say a word. Rex is going to say the first word that comes to his mind. Rex, are you ready to begin the game?
I think so.
Okay. So the first word, MBDS.
Stressful.
Amazon.
Fast.
Delivery.
Reliable.
Phone apps.
So many. Oh, one word. Sorry.
No, that's good.
No, that's
good.
fine. Yeah.
Instacart.
Grocery.
Ride sharing.
Uber.
Network analysis.
Knots.
Uber.
Ride sharing.
Max Implicit.
Psychology.
Okay, that's a great one. And then your final word is graduation.
Oh.
Is that what you're going to end with? Oh,
Yeah. Don't know what to think about.
We're right there, Rex.
Yeah. Almost.
That's a great way to end.
Well, my response to that graduation is congratulations.
Awesome.
I was like, really, at this point, it's like,
It's relief. It was more of a relief. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, Rex, thank you so much. If people have any questions for you about the study, where can they reach out to you? Where could they find you?
easier, probably LinkedIn. I typically will respond to message if it connects with me.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And we will have Rex's LinkedIn linked below if anybody has questions. We're also going to be releasing a blog at some point with all of these findings together. So that will also be out to give a little bit more color about this research that we did. Rex, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thanks for having me. It's great working with you.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Have a great day. And thank you, everybody.
For more information or updates, follow HCD Research on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at HCD Research Inc. and at HCD Neuroscience. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to rate, review, and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you and stay tuned for more curious conversations.